Welcome to Designing Hollywood podcast. I'm your host, Phillip Boutte Jr. Designing Hollywood is a podcast that's dedicated to all things movie and the movie industry and its talented professionals. Our guest today has been featured in multiple award-winning commercial campaigns, film, television, music videos, as well as museum exhibitions featured in Venice Beinalle. Her powerful use of color to tell stories on screen has become a trademark in her work. Before transitioning into film, she designed original avant-garde creations for celebrities such as a little-known person named Lady Gaga, and has had her costumes photographed internationally by some of the world's most noted photographers, including Ellen von Unwerth and David LaChapelle. So it's safe to say that we can add the title of artistic muse to her already impressive pedigree. She has shared this about herself in past interviews. I think one of the most important and really interesting parts of my job as a costume designer is when doing something sci-fi, is having to find details to tell hints about who the character is or what the character is. Sci-fi costume design is what gets me out of bed in the morning. I've done contemporary period. I've done amazing projects, but when it comes to really using my imagination in a way that's challenging, that's what really stimulates me. Without further ado, I would like to introduce you all to good friend and costume designer, stylist, fantasy spinner, and enthusiast, Miss Ami Goodheart.
Yes, what an intro. I like that. I like that. And you did quote me, and I forgot I said all of those things. Yes, sci-fi and fantasy does get me out of bed in the morning and sometimes in the middle of the night too.
I love it just because that quote spoke to me, because it's one of those things where I too really love sci-fi, but I love the challenge of figuring out who these characters and who the people are. And I think that especially in your design, it's so intricate and so detailed. I can tell that you're really constantly pulling the pieces of those puzzles together and creating new puzzles for yourself too, right? Because we can't ever do anything simple. We got to create massive things for ourselves.
I always feel like it's a more intimate relationship between the director and costume designer, because when I've done period films, I'm such a perfectionist and you do all the research and you're like, here, did I do good? But with sci-fi or fantasy, really the director and you and the costume designer are like, we're creating a baby that no one's seen before.
It's a fun process too, because what I love is that collaborative process kind of continues throughout the entire kind of filming, but it's like there's a constant push and pull, especially costume design. What I've learned a lot is that costume designers will sit and they kind of have to lay everything out and create this. It's like this ongoing puzzle piece that you're trying to solve, right? So you're giving yourself all these different things to kind of look at and formulate and piece together. And sci-fi specifically has a lot of that, plus then the imaginative side of it, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So I want you to walk me through kind of going into it. We asked the boring questions first, but what was the moment that you remember where this was what you wanted to do, or like this was like the aha moment of like, I want to be a designer?
I feel like I did become a costume designer by default, and I kind of moved organically through my life because I was a dancer. I was a professional performer and dancer for most of my life. But I think I didn't even know I wanted to be a costume designer. And a lot of people say this, like they didn't even know that was a job or that existed. But when I learned about fabric, clothing, vintage clothing, I fell in love with it when I was probably 17. I have maybe a different story than some of the designers I know that assisted or worked in costume shops. I actually didn't go to school. I was wanting to be a dancer, and did anything for classes, including cleaning mirrors and answering phones for free classes. And I had a job making minimum wage at a vintage clothing store. And actually back then, this is the early 90s and in New York City. And my boss taught me everything. He was this old man he had had his store for 25 years. Long story short, I was working there and he took me with him to do the buying. So we would buy clothes by the pound, and he would literally throw me in these bins, and he taught me, this fabric is gabardine. That's going to be a 1940s pants from a man. That's chiffon, or this is silk charmeuse. And I was just touching these things. And he was like, if you feel that silk charmeuse, you know that it's going to be a slip from the 1930s. And even though my head was focused on going to dance class and all of this, he gave me such an education, and I started to be able to recognize, because I was selling the clothes, anything from the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and in between all of those years. So there was an empty storefront down the street, and I was just turning 17, 18. And I think most kids were thinking about prom or things at that time. And I was like, who am I going to hire as my first employee? Which was my sister. And that was it. So I basically had, he said, I'll pay the first month's rent and insurance. After that, it's all you. Buy the clothes, sell the clothes, do what you want. So at 18 years old, I owned my first vintage clothing store. And that's where my passion of clothing, color, fabrics, most importantly, design, all started.
Do you find that the experience that you had there, and also too, just coming, I wanted to back up a little bit and go back from dance, because people kind of sleep on dance in general. It's such an athletic thing, and it's such a labor of love, in sense of dancers put their all into like their livelihoods and stuff like that, right? Do you find that dance, because it's so interpretive, really helped you to then come to costume design?
Absolutely.
Right.
The original reason I wanted to be a dancer was actually because I was very shy. I was incredibly shy. And I thought, well, if I'm just using my body, I don't have to speak, and I won't be embarrassed, or people won't think I'm dumb. I can use what I have, which was my natural flexibility and musicality. So I kind of got into being a dancer for that reason. But it's any art, you're expressing yourself through dance, through painting, through costume design. It all really comes from the same place. That's why I feel like it was an organic kind of transition into that of just being an artist.
It feels super interpretive. I think it's one of those things, like I used to dance too. And so it's one of those things that I think I'd still be doing that had I not hurt my back. And so I was curious to find out about it, because seeing you kind of dance and kind of use that as an outlet as well now has been really fun to watch. But also because dancing is so, to me, sometimes it's the same process. You're trying to find a character, you're just doing it without talking. And I think that costume design does that, but in a different way. Do you have a specific kind of going down that line? Is there any memories that you have from the store or from dance or whatever, in terms of taking those memories and then applying what you've learned to, projects moving forward?
I mean, all of it, definitely all of it. From when I was dancing, I basically was self-taught. I mean, I always knew how to sew from when I was like 4 or 5 years old, but I think I started designing the costumes for all the shows. Again, by default, we were dancing in these crazy cabaret shows, and we couldn't afford to pay somebody to make our costumes. So I started designing them. And that actually, all of those shows, those were little mini movies. Those were characters. Whether there was dialogue or not, you knew who these characters were, whether it was this mambo show or samba or whatever it was. So I think those live performances, that even from back when I was, 20 years old, I still see those movies in my head.
So the key thing here from between that, because you've brought up something else that I want to touch on in terms of your experience. You do a lot of different design across multiple facets of this. So I wanted you to kind of talk about the differences that you find between like stage, editorial, film, and kind of like how you're approaching those in terms of like your thought process.
Yeah, well, after retiring from being a dancer, I kept going with the costume design, and doing costumes for live events it's almost like doing commercials. You have no time to prep. And it started with smaller things and then turned into much, much, much bigger things. For example, Marc Jacobs used to throw a Christmas party every year, and there were big 600 people parties, and there were always themes. So one year was Venetian Carnival, one year was everything was all white 1920s deco, one was a Western year. And I was hired to design probably about 200 costumes per party per year.
Wow.
Yeah, and they all came out of this I guess it was like an 1,100 square foot loft in Brooklyn where I actually lived, and then we worked there. But I mean, giant Marie Antoinette costumes and things. And so that was pretty much the most epic, I would say, in size of these parties. But then the next day it's done.
Yes,
you know,
right.
There's somebody's eyelash, stuck on the bathroom mirror. You're getting the confetti out. And so I started designing other things that were performance art focused. I designed a human chandelier. It literally came out of, I've been to so many amazing parties and traveled to 30 countries or 40 countries at the time. And I thought, one thing I've never seen is a chandelier made out of women and thousands of Swarovski crystals. And if I'd never seen it, I designed it. I still have the sketch from 2006, the first pencil sketch. And I created that, and it became a performance art piece that we performed it in Istanbul 10 times.
Wow.
As an example.
That's incredible. I think that those are those things where it's like, what I like, especially for, our viewers, because a lot of it's educational, is to kind of listen to what Amy is saying is that her love of this, this passion of this career has taken her to many different places that you would never know or never think of. Like, it's not like she just woke up one day and said, I want to do this chandelier thing and its performance piece or whatever. It just took her there to that place and then allowed her to do things. And then it's taken her to costume and film and, all these different places. So it's important to know that. And also the one thing that she said too is travel. Travel is very important for design process and for designers, like, to kind of feed your soul. It's like how it's one of the things that, like, I think you need, correct? Like, in terms of being able to have.
Absolutely. I think I have been to 40 countries or more, maybe with islands in between, but every costume that I design now, there are pieces of all of those places I've been to in me. They're there forever inside of me. And so my inspiration really does come from so many things that I have experienced in traveling.
Do you have any, or maybe let me ask you this simple question. What's been your favorite place to travel to?
Ooh.
Do you have a favorite, like a place where you're like, this feels like home to me?
I mean, Tokyo was definitely my home away from home for about 5 years. But my trip to Iceland, I would say Cuba was magical because it was like time travel and I was dancing there. However, Iceland, have you ever been?
No.
Ooh, people there believe in gnomes, fairies, trolls. There's like this grown man, he's like 6'5", and he's like, yeah, my grandmother had fairies in her backyard. And you're like, you believe that? And
that's incredible. That's worth a visit alone. Yeah.
No, it's so beautiful. And I don't know, it's it's really cold, but it's so unbelievably stunning. We were filming a very epic commercial there, and we were on glaciers. We weren't even in Reykjavik. We were like, I was living my best National Geographic life. It was like, I'm a costume designer and I'm on a glacier. That's nuts.
See, and that's another one, right? Where I think one of the key things too that I want to inspire people to remember, especially when you travel and you're doing your job, you're doing your job, but you're doing the job that you love, is to have those moments where you're present. Meaning when you're present in the moment that you're in, and just like Amy said, like, there's glaciers and I'm here, like I'm present, I'm here, like, I don't know how I got here, but it's awesome. It's important to take those moments in, especially with jobs like this too, because they can be stressful, but they are also, there's a constant move and a constant energy until it's done, right? Then it's over and then you start another project. Are there any challenges you feel like you faced, like, in terms of like, and how did you overcome them in terms of, work?
It's interesting. I can't pinpoint it of like just doing commercials or just doing this. I think the most challenging thing I did was actually transition from doing costumes from live events and performance art to film like that. And I never went to school for it. I never assisted it. That was the most challenging, was I knew nothing. And I had to learn fast because I was like, my whole life I've had that not competitive, but I've had that thing of, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it 1,000%. And when I made up my mind that I wanted to do costume design for film and, you know, have it something permanent, not, like I said, it's done the next day, but have something, you know, permanently on film, I didn't know what I was doing. Like, Phillip, my first film, I did not know what I was doing at all. Thank God it was a short film, and thank God it was post-apocalyptic, because there was only 10 survivors on Earth in movie, and so I only had 10 people in the costume.
Right.
I mean, I remember hearing somebody talking about crafty and like craft services, and me, I'm like, glue guns, spray paint. I'm crafty.
Yeah, I'm crafty. Yeah, like I have no idea that they're talking about.
I thought that must be art department. Oh no, like I'm not even kidding you. I had no exposure to that. And when I did, I learned really fast. I watched so many videos of costume designers that were just my goddesses. I mean, I remember watching Ruth Carter in an interview before I moved to LA, and I was still in New York with I'm going to be a costume designer. What do they do? Let me watch all these videos. I remember seeing her sitting and with her library behind her.
All her books.
Definitely life-changing. Her listening to Sandy Powell talk about, you know, her color and plaid. I literally I didn't sleep. I just watched videos, interviews, immersed myself in reading and saying, how did they do it? Because I want to be like them. And now those are my friends and my peers. And actually, I remember seeing Lou Eyrich when I first moved to LA, and I was completely starstruck. And I went in the elevator because I didn't want to talk to her.
Are you and she's completely the nicest person ever.
I never told her this story, but now she'll probably hear it. But Lou, I was so starstruck by you.
They'd just be like, I don't even know what I'm gonna do. You know, it's fun to watch. It's fun to watch all of those different things unfold too, like how you can kind of be. I remember I had a book. That was like just about costume design or film costume design, and I used to flip through it, especially when I got into the industry. I used to flip through it and just look at, like, I'm going to try and work with this person and work with that person. And I remember seeing Ruth's picture in there and be like, I must work for her. And it didn't happen for a while, you know, until I actually met. And the first time we met was or we worked together was virtual. It was through the computer. So I remember having that inspiring thing and looking through all these costume designers, and I used to check them off, and it's pretty incredible. I like to because I'm an illustrator, it's been interesting to go back and look at that now. And I've worked with so many of them in the book, but also been inspired by them, like you said, to now be peers. You know, it's a fun kind of full circle moment to look back on that, but to remember, like, when you're like, I didn't know what I was doing at all.
But I knew that I loved it, and that was what I wanted to do the rest of my life. I was going to say, when you were talking about, you know, checking off kind of the list of, I want to work with that person, I want to work with that person. Being such a visual person, and for you being a visual artist and your artwork that you make, don't you feel that that is the complete connection to manifestation?
Yes.
Like the visual, because I also sketch. I mean, I'm not an illustrator, but I sketch, I do collage. I mean, I don't know who you know who still cuts up magazines, but I do.
It's the best thing. It really is. You have to have something, you know, It puts it somehow. I do believe putting it out any way you can puts it into the universe and makes it a pliable, like, functional plan, as opposed to it being in your head. You know? Absolutely.
It's there. The first time I came to LA to try to see what this whole game was about, I went to Western Costume. You know, I met Marks again. He was also like,
yeah.
I was like, this is the. But I was looking to get signed as, you know, with an agent, because I thought, well, if I'm going to be a costume designer, I need an agent. And needless to say, I wasn't in the guilds. I didn't, you know anything, and I will keep this person nameless. But one agent that I went to interview with, and I had an assistant with me from New York, and to use the expression, I got laughed out of there. I mean, I literally got laughed out of there. They were like, good luck, you know nothing, kind of come back and, when you're in the guild and all of this stuff. And as a parting gift, before laughing me out of his office, he gave me a Costume Designer magazine. And I still have the cover. And I went back to New York and I cut it and I put it on a mood board. And I thought,
I love that.
I was like, and I forgot what year it is, but it was probably 2013 or something like that. And I still have it in a folder. And that was manifestation in the physical, artistic, me making a collage that you can. And I have a stack of magazines right now of the Costume Designer magazine. I think I'm in at least 12 issues. And I was like,
that's incredible.
I was like,
full triumph moment too. A triumph moment of it's great.
That's those moments. And I know you also experienced that once you put it in the physical and that happens, you're like, what? Right.
It feels like it just kind of pops up out of nowhere too. I mean, there's a work and there's a goal, but I think what really happens is I think that there's a mindset shift when you put something down on paper or when you put it out visually, even if it's just a blueprint or a plan, it feels like your mind shifts from it being like a useless thought to somehow, even if it's steering you and you're not aware, it's steering you to get it done. You know what I mean?
That's exactly what you just said is the perfect way of describing that. You don't even know. And then,
Well, something I wanted to ask you too was just really quickly, because I want to transition a bit. Your environment, I find, obviously, is something that helps all artists. I want you to just walk us through really quickly, because there is somewhat of a visual effect. I want people to see this background that you have in your creative space and where you live. So please walk to the back and show them the scale of that plant and that painting.
I love plants. I love the color green. I have a garden actually on my roof in a parking lot that I grow vegetables. Awesome. I love plants. And you wanted to see this, but I have a 14-foot tall bird of paradise tree.
It's incredible.
This is my love. This is the color green. Yeah, so.
I think it's just incredible to see how massive that plant is, because you just can't tell from you sitting here. So I hope everybody enjoyed that as much as I did, because I never would have noticed it.
How funny. Yeah. I have a lot of windows and a lot of sunlight, and it keeps me up. It keeps me happy.
It definitely affects your creative process. Yes.
And it's one of the best sayings about people, because we all have to evolve, right? As artists, right. We all have to evolve. And humans are like plants. We're either growing or dying. Correct. You can't look at any house plant. It's either one or the other. They never stay. And we are growing and evolving. So that's a reminder.
I think it's something that I constantly look at those things, or at least in terms of like how process and how it affects artists specifically. And I find one of the things that I look at, even in your environment, you can definitely tell you like nature, green, all of those things, right? But underneath it, what I get from it too is that, especially with work, you pour so much of your creative energy into work that it feels like your environment feels very calm and very collected and very just kind of like it gives you the space that you need to create. Right? Because if you've seen Amy's work, I can't even describe it a lot of the times. It's so intricate and detailed. And she puts it feels like someone taking all their creative energy and like putting it and funneling it into one place. It's like her shooting out a creative power beam or something like that. But then it takes all the energy, and then there's a recharge moment. And I feel like your environment is kind of showing like it's recharged, it's serene, it's peaceful, but it also allows you to create.
Yeah. I mean, also having that attention to detail and going it definitely, it can be challenging, because like it's never done, whatever that project, whatever that garment is. Somebody asked me, well, when will that, I was doing a Alice in Wonderland, Queen of Hearts. And I was putting the little crystals, little rhinestones in the bath. And then I started getting smaller ones. And then started getting smaller ones. And I bought Swarovski that were smaller than a piece of kosher salt, like smaller than salt.
Wow.
And I just kept going. I couldn't stop. And I thought, well, somebody will see it.
Yeah.
Maybe, maybe it'll be in a museum one day. Maybe you'll never see it on film, but I just couldn't stop. I just got smaller and smaller and smaller into the details because I thought someone's going to look at that and appreciate it, I guess.
But that's the way that it works. I think oftentimes there's so many things that designers will put into stuff. Like I think those intricate details do matter, because you're right. They matter specifically if people are viewing them, great. But I think more importantly, they matter to you. And I think that then each piece becomes its own, it has its own artistic merit, regardless of what people to get out of it or not. I also love Easter eggs. So I love things like you said, where you put something into the costume and it has a very direct meaning, but people can kind of take from it what they want, or they miss it completely. Those are some of my favorite parts about the costume, just like a detail that was just yours, or something that you were obsessed about. Like, I have to put these little crystals on here just because I know that they're there and that they matter, or whatever it is. Do you find that those are some of your favorite moments, is just getting into the detail of putting in something into the costume, giving it a special feel?
Oh, absolutely. And textiles, it's there can be so many different types of velvet, from velour texture to the most fine silk velvet. And that detail to me of like how the light hits it, it can't be different. Like I have a 1930s silk velvet dress that I've had probably since I was 18, and it's just a piece of art that I keep and everywhere I've moved. And that detail of whatever we're doing that has to have velvet, the light has to hit that exactly that way. And so you can't fake it.
Now, this is something that I want to talk you through too, or want you to talk me through. So if you guys don't know Amy is pretty much like a master of short form costume design. She pretty much is like and when I say that, I want us to talk about it, because I don't think some of you might not know what that is or what it entails, but it's the way that she has to work sometimes is under extreme scrutiny of time, or even sometimes budget, or both, or it's the opposite, where it's just something so grand and so massive that she has to put an output of energy out. Can you talk us through some of these projects, like really kind of explain to us like what this is and like how you kind of dive into it?
Absolutely. I mean, doing short form, like I said, I've done a ton of commercials, music videos, short films, which I love doing. You have no prep time. I mean, it's crazy what we have to pull out to get that done in such a short amount of time. And the other thing about doing short form is there's no time for things to be permanent. Doing a film, we're all sitting around the table, we're all planning how this is going to look. And a lot of times in commercials, the production designer and I don't even meet until we're on set. It's a couple of texts, and and things change. Change. I've worked with really creative music video directors like Dave Meyers, who's just this creative genius, but his mind is like
all over.
And that one I did that one Justin Timberlake video. We had 320 people in that video, and a lot of custom made things. And I mean, things just kept changing. It was all night shoots. But that's something in short form, I think you just have to be ready. And my best friend who worked with me for years and still does assist sometimes, he said, don't believe anything until it's already happened.
Correct.
And it was amazing. We were in Italy. I had a huge team, all these people running around, speaking Italian really fast, and things kept changing. Oh, we'll never see this actor. We'll see him in silhouette only. And are you sure?
Nope.
Yep, we'll never see that cape. We're going to use a body double, and then it's a close-up of a cape that hasn't been steamed,
It's all...
No, like wrinkles.
You are speaking my language. A lot of people, I was a production designer for a long time before I transitioned into costume, right? And I did a lot of big music videos, right? Amy speaking this way makes me feel like it's like a part of home, because that's exactly what it was. I'd be like, are you sure? Are we gonna? No, we're only gonna see that corner, Phil, only that corner. And then it's like a shot of the entire room. So I would always prepare for all of it, knowing that it was gonna be that way. But one of the most annoying qualities that I have, especially I know for my wife, is I never get excited about things until we're there. So it will be like, we're going on this massive trip. But I think it's because of film where I'm like, okay, I'll believe it when it's happening or happened.
Absolutely.
So it's like, I'm like, right when we're on the plane, it's the first time where I'm like, oh, I'm super excited about wherever we've decided to go. But up until that point, I'm like, like, no, I don't know.
I'm the same way, because you just have to know, you're not the only creative person bringing something to the table. And
Correct.
There's a lot of other creatives working, but whoever the power that be in that project, they change their mind and you have to. So I do definitely believe, and anytime people assist me, well, the director said they only wanted a blue jacket, in that, nope, have 25, have orange, purple, yellow, blue. Well, there's no yellow. The production designer said there's no yellow in the whole movie. Get yellow jackets.
Yep.
But so we're changing everything, and it's so fast. I mean, I've prepped music videos with 2 days. I've prepped commercials I've prepped in 1 day sometimes on shoots. And it's just like, I mean, if they have a nice budget and I can hire a lot of assistants, we make it happen. But it's nuts. But I mean, somehow I've just been so fortunate that I've had directors trust me, and sometimes there's just no time for other. I work with this one director a lot. Can I give him a shout out?
Please.
Anthony Leonardi.
Hi, Anthony.
He's worked for Boutte, doing a lot of short form commercials. Boullette's owned by the Russo brothers, and I've met the Russos many times. And he, as a director, because we work together, he trusts me in a way that I hope with moving more into feature films, I get to have more collaborations like that for, like you're saying, sci-fi, fantasy, with directors that we just read each other's minds. And it's so nice.
It's so important.
We did a commercial last week, actually. And I can't tell you what it was for, but the set was 1800s cowboys.
Oh, that's incredible.
It was Western. We had a lot going on. Horses pooping on chaps. I mean,
like all kinds of stuff. You're like, oh no, yeah.
And I started doing what I always do, is these really intricate mood boards. And I'm always about collage, and online on Pinterest and all of that. And I sent Anthony one picture of these cowboys from the West, American West, from the 1860 or something. And he was like, you know what? I trust you. And it just came out so incredible, because I knew that I didn't have to waste any thought or time thinking, are they going to like it? Or is this the right direction or that? So that's a really fun, I know that so many costume designers talk about who their collaboration is. And I would say for short form or commercials specifically, it's definitely a great feeling, because there's no time to not trust.
The best collaborations for any medium are the ones where there's trust, where you know that the person is hiring you for what you bring to the table, and they're not really worried about it in the sense of like controlling it. Like, everything has to be the way I would do it 100%. I think that's something that I learned on set, specifically from working, especially as my job load increased and I had bigger projects to worry about, was making sure that I was hiring an art crew or a team where like, I know I can go to this person and I can say, we need such and such, and whatever they're going to come up with is going to be amazing. And I don't have to sit there and micromanage or say anything, and then the set's going to come out feeling the right way. So costume, same thing. And the work between you and your director, it's important for them to say, I'm hiring Amy to do Amy, and I need her to just go and like be free and feel creative, because ultimately that's what I feel like that is. It's Ellen Moroznik often talks about her collaboration with Steven Soderbergh, right? He treats her, they have a relationship that same way, where it's very much so it's a collaboration and he's trusting her to bring that part to the table. But I feel like when I work for Ellen as an illustrator, I always call her a creative amplifier because of that very reason, which is I feel like I'm able to do my part as well without it being something, you know what I mean? I mean, I feel trusted, you know, and I think that feels really nice for creatives in general.
I mean, trusting your assistants is just the most glorious feeling. I have a few assistants from New York that that have worked with me from the time they were interns even, that have worked with me. I'm gonna say Aaron's been with me like 13, 14 years. And even wherever they are in the world, I will fly them to LA, even on my own dollar, you know. I've flown assistants to Thailand because I'm like, you know what, out of the 10 people there, I know that she will bring with her this much stuff, and they just know my mind. They know they already know what I'm thinking because they work with me so much and can reproduce my aesthetic so that, it's just incredible. It's incredible to know that, okay, you know, I've worked with Diego Montoya, one of my best friends, who came to Iceland with me, and he's now the designer for We're Here, and has done like all of the drag. He's done all of the drag, you know, RuPaul's Drag Race winners and everything. That's incredible to see somebody who was my intern have all of this success as a costume designer. I cry, you know, I'm like, but he knows my work blindfolded because we've known each other that long. And as a costume assistant, I think he's been to at least 6 or 7 countries with me. Cause I'm like, he can log right into my brain.
Do you feel as though like those collaborations, especially when you guys when you're moving around, that's also a training ground? Like, do you feel like you're constantly training for the job? Like it's kind of like it kind of pumps it up and kind of makes it to where you're continuing to learn things each time?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love learning, and that's why I throw myself into these challenges, you know, like not knowing what a costume designer in film is, and you know, learning from all of them. Learning from each project is new. You take from that, learning from my assistants, learning from the producers. It's incredible. It's really incredible. I every day have those moments when I'm like, what? Like somebody wants to hire me for that? That's amazing. You know, it's I'm just, yeah. I digress.
No, but no, this is something that I think people really want to hear, because it's fine to talk about all the things and the projects that you've worked on and stuff like and things like that. But I think also there's a lot of the mental headspace of being a creative person, but then doing it in this job. And then also being able to execute the way that you do at the level that you do for the amount of time, or just where you're going. Like, I want to do this really quick before I forget, but I wanted you to talk briefly about the big campaign that you had with Jude Law, because I want people to understand like how the massive scale of these things and how you're pulling them off. So just talk us through that really quickly, because I want to get to one of your new projects as well.
Ooh, well, that project, first of all, being hired for that project was the most holy cow moment. I wanted to be a costume designer in film, commercials, all of that. It was a project. So there's a movie. I mean, there's a story called Momotaro. It's a Japanese story, Peach Boy, and it has always been a children's book. It's been a few animes, but it's never been a film, a live action. So this director had the idea to do a feature film based on Momotaro, but do a really incredible, you know, he had a certain idea in his head, and his costume designer was Eiko Ishioka. And now she was one of my inspirations. I mean, Eiko, again, like, you know, her, Alexander McQueen, you know, all of these people that influenced me. And while that movie was in development, she passed away.
Yes.
And they interviewed 10 designers here, Academy Award nominated. I mean, so many huge costume designers. And again, this is even before. And they trusted me that my work would be comparable to Eiko Ishioka. And I didn't even know that until I was already hired, that I won that campaign. So it was a Pepsi campaign, although nobody drinks a beverage in it or anything like that. Pepsi just paid us to have a lot of fun. They paid us a lot of money to have a lot of fun.
A lot of fun, yeah.
And and so we did these short films that instead of doing the movie Momotaro, the director chunked it into 6 mini movies. So 6 short films. And one of the biggest stars in Japan, Ogori Shun, and then Jude Law came in on episode 4, which was really fun also because he doesn't speak Japanese. So I was kind of translating everything. He was like, what am I doing here? I was like, fighting ogres, of course, you know.
Yeah, I was like, oh, duh, yeah.
Like, what am I doing here? I was like, you see those gladiators? That. That campaign definitely changed my life as a designer. And we filmed in Italy, and we filmed in Guam. Guam was another. Oh, we filmed all over the place. The desert. We filmed during a tsunami.
That's incredible.
In the tsunami, and there was like 100 extras and people dressed as monks, and I mean it was just the most epic, literally the most epic commercial campaign and the most successful commercial campaign. And they actually made dolls, like little figurines, and there was all this merchandise. I went to Japan a couple years ago for Halloween, and actually I had some. This is a story that's so funny, Phil.
Yes, please.
So we had a lot of duplicates for Jude Law's costume for episode 4. And somehow I ended up with at least one of them that never got brought back to production. And another costume from episode 3 from another character, this big crow character. And I tailored his costume to fit me. And my friend for the other costume. And we went to Tokyo and we did the big Halloween parade. And so I was dressed as Jude Law.
That's incredible.
So if you go back, if anyone goes to my website and watches these 6 episodes, so we were in the parade, and there was a few people dressed like us.
So that's awesome. So there was people there was people at the Japan's first Comic-Con, Anime Con, and Halloween dressed like us, and a couple came up to us and they were like, oh, sugoi. They were like, wow, that looks exactly. It's like, it is, yeah.
That looks exactly like the movie. Whoa, Oni, Jude Law, And so I thought, I still have it, and we wore it, and it was the most mind-blowing feeling to see kids dressed up in my characters in Halloween costumes.
That's awesome. I mean, that's always the most rewarding thing, is seeing something that you've worked on and then seeing that people appreciate it enough to be able to, make it for themselves. I don't think I'll ever get over that feeling of seeing someone dressed in something and you just remember where it started, where it came from. It's incredible.
Isn't that wild? And it came from you drawing it.
Yes, and manifesting it back out, right?
It's just, I admire what you do so much. You're just also one of my superstars.
Same here. Thank you very much.
Seriously.
I appreciate you. I think because it's hard. Amazing. I've got to say, for you, what I want people to take away from this episode when you're listening to Amy is it's really hard for her specifically to explain a lot of the projects that she works on. And she can explain them, but there's so much detail. And I just don't think you guys really understand how much it goes into, especially because a lot of it, especially in short form, it's a massive swell of creativity and art and like pulling all your resources and all your contacts and like every single thing to solve these little issues, right? Or big issues, but you're doing it quickly. And it all comes up to that one moment where you're shooting and it's all there and the lights and everything's happening. And then immediately there's like this immediate calm on the set where it's like it's all over. And then you're just trying to kind of pick up the pieces and you're wrapping your stuff and you're like, what happened? And then later on, there's like this what happened to me moment, and then the work comes back and you see it and you just are just really appreciative. And it's like, but it's a constant doing that over and over and over and over and over again. So I want people to really respect what you do. I want them to understand how much it takes, but I respect you, and I respect you as an artist.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh.
Completely.
Can I talk about one feature that's coming out?
Please do.
Very soon. Because again, that was like it used to be not in my comfort zone. Now I'm working on a lot of features, but we started back in 2016, and it's this movie called My Name is Andrea.
Okay.
And an incredible film, a story that needs to be told. It's a biopic film about Andrea Dworkin, who was a very radical feminist and writer in her career. And we filmed in periods from 1957 all the way up to 2005 was the period. So not only was it the challenge of, Amy, you're now doing a period film, it was now you're doing 6 period films in one film. Right,
because it's in one film, right.
So the research that went into 1950s with Amanda Stenberg, who's just such an incredible actress, moving through the 60s and 70s, we had Andrea Riseborough, who is also like a phenomenal actor, and then oh my gosh, Ashley Judd is one of the actors in it.
That's awesome.
She was in the late 90s, 2000s period, which are not attractive clothes. And we had a really good laugh about, the 2000s kind of dad sneakers and stuff like that, and the overalls. But that movie's coming out actually very soon, and completely that challenge of taking all of the details that I get obsessed with and putting that into a period film was so amazing and challenging, but it was just something I'd never done before, as far as all of my fantasy and sci-fi and crazy weird stuff, and then doing a period film and making it also not just period accurate, but it's about a real person.
Right.
Gloria Steinem is one of the EPs on the film. Also, so of course I wanted to make her proud because it's Gloria Steinem, and incredible directors who one of the directors, she did Queen Sugar, and just an incredible cast of people, which is why it made it really doable. But I'm really proud of it, so hopefully everyone will see My Name is Andrea, and anyone who does period films from the 50s or 60s or 70s or 80s, so much respect. So much respect.
Did you find that, because this is something that you were kind of touching on it, did you find that when you were going to each period, you were almost curating a design of looks where it was period accurate, but also like kind of taking the best qualities of each period and kind of trying to find a way to kind of hone them into a design that felt real, but also kind of pushed a little bit to where it felt like pleasing? Like, how were you approaching each
of the 6 chapters? Well, I mean, every time I watch a period film, anything that looks cartoony and overdone or too obvious, it's the 70s, everyone's in bell bottoms, it's so with this, it was just all about the research was all about watching and looking at photographs of real people, not movies even. My aunt gave me, my cousin gave me her photo album, and it's all of her pictures of her from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and I really use that as inspiration. The other thing about taking something and making it accurate, period accurate, what I did with this film and the 6 chapters of all of the decades was really using colors to express who that person was through her years and her life, because she starts out as a 10-year-old girl up until she's in her 40s. And so for those periods, when I had Amanda Stenberg in the first chapter, 1957, I actually had to make her look like she was 13. And she's grown. Yes. And so that was, wow, like the proportion of how tall her socks had to be to make her legs look shorter and all of that. So it was really these sherbet colors, these 1950s, very cool production design as well. But going from that until, the woman, Andrea Dworkin, once she starts finding her strength as a writer, the colors starting to get bolder, more saturated. Then we have the dark period of her life, Well, I won't give it away, so you have to see it.
Yes.
But using color was the most powerful way for me to tell the story of this real person that really lived and had her own journey, while keeping it period accurate.
That's something that I think that we could dive into for forever. Just talking about, even like you said, there's several challenges in what Amy just laid out. It's the story of a person, a real person. It's the performances. So she's thinking about the actors and the actresses and like kind of the performance they're going to bring and finding their character. It's the period accuracy. So you're going back and making sure that the costume doesn't take people out of the period, but then also making it interesting enough to where it's not dull or boring. And then the entire arc of the film also has color cues that help you tell what part the character's life is at. That's a lot of work. So I think you guys just really need to break down. And then also too, then there's the inspiration, and she's using that same process she talked about before, mood boards, pulling things, experiences, life experience, all that stuff goes into design. And it's a full process. And I think that even one of the things that we always talk about too is just going between live action film, all these different things. I find the processes to be very similar. It's just the amount of time or budget that you have to kind of pull them off. But it's also the creative process really doesn't get, it's not something I think for a lot of us that you can truncate. You really have to go through it. Even if it's like on the fly, your mind does this rapid fire thing where it's like, okay, there's this, and it's like trying to make all these little decisions. And I feel like with a project like this one, you had to do a lot of that, but also the challenge of changing time and doing things like you said, changing age. That's also a really hard one that I think when people watch stuff, they don't realize, like, you're like, wow, I really do feel like, even though I know this actress is in her 20s, I really do feel like she was a kid in that moment.
Yeah.
And that's a big collaboration between the two of you, you know?
We finished filming, with Ashley Judd and Andrea Riseborough last year, right in the middle of COVID. Which was,
how was
wow. We finished filming the end of October, beginning of November of last year. Well, that was crazy. Emotionally, it was really crazy for me, or just intense for me, because I live alone. I have my puppy. And so I was really just, not going out at all. And I was in my home, which was incredible for my introverted me, as far as reading, watching films, getting all of that. Like, that period was like a really good long meditation. But I went from 0 to 100. I went from only being alone, not seeing anyone, to being on a film set and being tested every day and all of the things. And so that was also one of the biggest challenges for all of us. There were certain actors that didn't want to be within 6 feet of even the wardrobe department. So we would have to go leave their clothes in the trailer, and then they would dress themselves, and I would have to check. And that was the first time I ever worked. Obviously, so many people that worked during COVID, we're still in COVID, but that really made that whole film. Yeah, it was intense. It was definitely, it's an intense movie anyway. I hope everyone watches it.
Please, 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 everybody. My name is Andrea, correct?
Yes.
I want everybody to remember to watch this film, and also to check out and think about all the things that Amy was talking about in terms of, if you're watching the film, you're enjoying it, and you're seeing the transition of time, know that that doesn't just happen, and it takes a lot of work to get there, and a lot of collaboration. We like to push collaboration a lot, because I think that it is something that's key to our job. So the fact that she's able to be trusted and to have her, directors in mind and all of these, and the actors and stuff, and being able to transition between periods and tell this story through costume, character, color is super important. So make sure you guys watch that with that in mind, and just make sure you go and check in with Amy. Amy, tell us, because we're closing out, tell us your where viewers can reach you, or where they can see your work on Instagram or your socials and stuff.
Well, all of my social media is just my name, Ami Goodheart. My website's amigoodheart.com. And I'm also represented by Zero Gravity Management. Big up to my awesome agents. And so amigoodheart.com. I hope you look at my work and enjoy it.
I'm going to give a quick little shout out. I want to say thanks to the Designing Hollywood podcast team, which is producer and co-founder Martika Ibarra, co-founder Marilyn Vance, and then our wonderful guest, Ami Goodheart, for coming on the show today. I want to thank you very much. I want to thank our sponsor, Vincent Lappas, with Los Angeles Performing Arts Conservatory, which provides training in acting, screenwriting, and filmmaking for beginners, advanced artists, as well as those that are transitioning into English-speaking markets. Follow me on Instagram at PHIL_Boutte. And I appreciate Ami again for coming. Thank you guys for watching.
This was such an honor. Honestly, this is such an honor. I've watched and listened to all of those. So when I was asked, thank you, Martika. Thank you, Marilyn. And thank you, Phil.
Thank you very much. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you to our sponsor, Gardena Cinema. Gardena Cinema is the only old-fashioned single-screen standalone neighborhood movie theater still in operation in the South Los Angeles area. Owned and operated by Judy Kim and the Kim family since 1976, Gardena Cinema has been able to transition to outdoor cinema in the parking lot for an intimate drive-in experience, and has hosted movie shoots, music video shoots, and still photo shoots for an authentic vintage-looking location. Thank you to our viewers. Be sure to follow and subscribe to Designing Hollywood Podcast on social media, and subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Deezer, and the YouTube channel for complete past and current episodes. Also, we're now available on Amazon and Siri Voice Search.